Good evening, 49er faithful. Welcome to the episode of the Sneakerhead call-in show, our usual Thursday program. Yesterday, we were off a little bit. We were doing our Tuesday program on Wednesday, doing the mailbag, and that just means that we were right next to one another. The mailbag and then the call-in show, two of my favorites. Nothing against Randon and Between Two Beards. Love that show as well. Absolutely. But here we are getting into the topics that the faithful want to talk about because we've got Sneakerheads, which are members of Rob Schuh's channel. Get it? Play on words. Rob Schuh, Sneakerheads kind of ties in there. And we will be talking about whatever the Sneakerheads want to bring to the table. Topics that are top of mind for me are Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, because that continues to be the storyline in the national narratives. It continues to come up. You had another piece this morning on the radio with Colin Cowherd and Michael Silver in talking about Trey Lance and arm fatigue being the phrase of the day all over 49ers Twitter and every other news source that provides 49ers content. And so that's what we're going to be talking about here today. Welcome to all of you that are here watching at the moment. If you're watching right now and you enjoy the content, please hit the like button to send this message a little further out into cyberspace. And for those of you that were here in the chat prior to the start of the show, wanted to say hello as well. Stivers 209 Football. Rob, how are you doing lately? 49ers need to trade Jimmy to Seattle tomorrow. Get Jimmy off the roster. Trey Lance starts week 1, 2022 season against the Bears in Chicago. I definitely think the latter half of that is going to happen, that Trey Lance is going to start week 1. Jimmy traded to Seattle would be an interesting development in this scenario. We are basically looking at it as one team remaining that might trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, the Cleveland Browns. They're left without that backup, and if they have a long suspension for Deshaun Watson, they could want a starting quarterback. But if the 49ers were willing to trade him to Seattle, that would be another potential option. We've got Stunna in the building. Chris Royal, Ricky Williams, 916 49er, Treasure Kisses, Raphael 562 Niners, and Jamie Bryant all here in the chat. And we've got Chris Royal down below. We are going to our first caller coming in. Chris, how are you doing this fine afternoon, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Always enjoy having one of these call-in shows. Get to talk Niners. Get to pick people's brains and get some additional insights about what may be going on. So tell me, Chris, what do you make of these continual storylines that keep coming out? The most recent one being the one around Trey Lance and the arm fatigue. Do you have brain fatigue in hearing about these various reports?
Yeah, a little bit for sure. It's interesting that they're bringing up arm fatigue. I mean, he hasn't really played a whole lot of football in 2 years,
right?
Since college. So, and he's getting the bulk of the practicing now. So of course he's gonna, need to get loosened up more. There might be a little bit of arm fatigue there, but I don't think it's anything to start the whole, keep Jimmy train.
Right
at all.
What it turns out is it doesn't take much to start that train back up. Like just a little whiff of smoke, and people are like, I knew it. I knew they kept Jimmy for a reason. There's a reason they haven't traded him yet, and it's because of this arm fatigue thing. Instead of just going with the storyline that's been out this entire time, which is the Niners are very much trying to trade Jimmy. They just haven't found that partner because of the surgery.
Yeah, I definitely think I don't think Jimmy will be on the team, and I think the arm stuff with Trey is just him working through getting his arm ready. I don't
that makes sense.
Anything to worry about.
I feel similarly. I'll be interested to hear if anyone within the organization or Trey himself give any credence to this term, right? If they begin to use it at any point. Until they do, I'll assume that it falls into the category of rumor and speculation and potentially, as you were saying, like if it did come out that he was a bit fatigued, potentially it is because he hasn't had all those many reps up until this point. So I guess a little bit of soreness wouldn't be out of the question. Certainly when I'm going into the gym trying to get myself ready, I've got some soreness. So if he's just got general arm soreness, I'm not concerned about that. But I just do want to see them out on the field so that we can put all of these rumors to rest.
Oh, definitely. And if there's anything that we're guilty of this offseason is not really having a whole lot to talk about. So,
Yes.
you know, it's Jimmy and Trey is the gift that keeps on giving. So it'll probably continue to be a thing until Jimmy's out of here.
It is. And I say it tongue in cheek, like, I wish I didn't have to keep talking about it. But there is that blessing in disguise of like this dead period. I mean, last year we had plenty to talk about because we had just traded away what seemed like the future to bring in an unknown quantity. Unfortunately, it's still an unknown quantity, and we're still speculating about it this offseason. And you're right, though. We haven't had any additional storylines come in that really give us an opportunity to get away from talking about these two guys.
Yeah, I mean, most people want to talk about this. They're not wanting to talk about, hey, is Jason Verrett going to be healthy? How's Various Ward going to work out? All this stuff. It's not going to get it's not going to get the attention as the quarterbacks are.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to bring in a couple of comments here. We got Jamie Bryant. We will hear about Trey until the season starts. Let's wait till Trey gets on the field, see how he's developed. It might just close a lot of mouths. I mean, that is the reasonable stance, Jamie. Jamie is all over this. Let's just wait. Let's see it with our own eyes. But people don't want to wait. People want to talk out of the side of their mouths. They want to speculate. I can't fault them for it. I like to speculate. I'm a big fan of speculation. I do like speculation with strong logic behind it. And that's where I fall off on these comments about Trey. Is I'm not seeing the source material. I'm not seeing the reasoning behind a lot of these people that question his future success.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't really see anything to it. I think it's just them, trying to get something going with quiet off season.
Yes, it is indeed a quiet offseason. Bringing in Victor Mendoza here. He says, what's up, Rob? Now that Baker Mayfield got traded to the Panthers, what does that mean for Jimmy, and what's the value for him? Well, it means one less destination for Jimmy Garoppolo. But, Chris, I'd like to get your stance on actual value, because I think that the trade that occurred to get Baker, as far as eating a percentage of salary and the draft pick that was included with it, it has an effect on Jimmy's value because it closed the door on one potential landing spot. And so in basic supply and demand, when you've reduced demand by 50%, that's going to hurt the equation. That's going to hurt your value from a supplier standpoint. But when it comes to the actual compensation for the trade, I don't feel it has a huge impact because there's a big difference between Baker and Jimmy in that Baker's salary was entirely guaranteed. So the Browns were on the hook for all of it if they didn't get rid of him, whereas the 49ers are in a unique position. If they cut Jimmy Garoppolo, they save $24.2 million. So there's no incentive for them to eat a certain percentage of the deal unless it's to get a specific draft pick back. Do you sort of agree with that logic as I've laid it out there, or how do you see it, Chris?
Yeah, no, I agree with it. And remind me what was the pick that they got for, and how
they got a fifth rounder in 2024, and it is a one of those what do you call it, where it can change. It could be a fourth rounder if he plays 75% of the snaps, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that kind of seems like what we're looking at as far as Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, if any team's gonna offer anything, it's gonna be a conditional pick. That
you would think so. Conditional pick sounds right. Fifth rounder feels low to me, but I've been on the train of Jimmy having value for the longest time. We're going to bring on Korean 49er in a minute, and he's going to tell me how he has correctly sussed out that Jimmy has no value, right? So I've had to admit that I was wrong about that, whether it was the circumstances that played out the way that they did or not. I appreciate USMC coming in. We did have Chris say it already, but yes, a conditional pick is the term I was searching for earlier. I could see the Niners wanting like a fourth rounder conditional third, right? If Jimmy plays 80% of the snaps for his new team, maybe that they want a third rounder in return. They may be wishing in getting that type of compensation. But if Jimmy's willing to renegotiate a deal, I feel like there's still a chance the Niners get some type of compensation that's better than what the Browns got for Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I kind of wanted to ask you a question about, it kind of falls in line with Jimmy's value. To me, there's still 5 teams that have, not so great quarterbacks, starting quarterbacks. So, I mean, if you look at Houston Texans with with David Mills. You know,
Right.
he looks pretty solid, but you know, I still think Jimmy's a little bit better option there. You got Daniel Jones in New York, with Deshaun Watson possibly going out in Cleveland. That opens a big spot there. Mitch Trubisky and with the Steelers, I mean, the Steelers got a pretty solid team around them. So, I mean, if they were to bring him in with, float out a 5th round pick, just to get him in the door, maybe we eat some of the salary, just to get him competing with Mitchell Trubisky. And then obviously the Seahawks. I mean, I don't think they'll necessarily trade for him, but I think there are teams out there that if, they're not really comfortable with what their quarterbacks are bringing, that they might start to maybe battle a little bit to see who can give the better pick.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, if I'm Jimmy Garoppolo, I said this during the season last year, I saw Pittsburgh as an ideal landing spot for Jimmy Garoppolo. If I am he and his camp, his agent, I'm doing everything I can to try and land myself in one of those sweet landing spots, as opposed to getting to a desperate situation where I've got to take whatever suitor comes my way because the 49ers cut me a week before cutdown day. By the way, I just wanted to bring this in. Foy Daniels asked this question, and it's relevant to this conversation. When is the cut down to the 53-man roster? I just looked it up, and it is August 27th. Wait, no, 53-man roster, Tuesday, August 30th. This year. You got to get to the 80-man roster by the 23rd, and then the final preseason games, the 27th. Cut down day is August 30th. So if it's end of August and Jimmy finally gets cut, he's now not going to have very many options to go get land a starting job with some team. So if I'm his camp, again, I'm looking for what are these ideal scenarios, the teams that I want to go to once I am cut. And then I'm trying to facilitate a trade there so that it happens early enough during training camp that I can come in, learn the playbook, and give myself an actual opportunity to start. And to your point, if that means renegotiating the contract so that the Steelers or a team like the Giants or any number of those teams that you mentioned could come calling and say, hey, we'll throw you a little something, renegotiate Jimmy's contract and bring him on board. I think the Niners have to start exploring that because it does allow them to save some face. Anything in return for Jimmy, as long as they don't pay any portion of his salary, is something, and it's better than nothing, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's the best that we can hope for, is the best case scenario is that we have a couple of teams, kind of, trying to get Jimmy in the door, even if we're eating a little bit of salary and, getting like maybe a 4th or 5th round pick or a conditional 5th round pick that could be bumped up to a 4th, something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like Celts Chronicles call out here, Sneakerhead here on the channel saying, talk down on Trey, talk up on Garoppolo. This is what you do to get a bite on Jimmy. Yes, they are still trying to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. Jesse saying what most are thinking, though. Nobody giving up any capital for Jimmy Garoppolo. Many people just waiting to see if he does get cut. Interesting question from 91649er about that arm fatigue issue that we touched on just a moment ago. Rob Schuh, what would the 49ers gain by leaking arm fatigue rumors about Lance? Who's the big mouth? I don't think this would be an intentional leak. The leaks about Jimmy, about interest in Jimmy, about wanting to hold on to Jimmy, about how great Jimmy is, about going back and watching his tape from last year and being like, oh, you know what? He was a better quarterback than we initially thought he was. All of that, I think, is intentional leaking by the team in some respect. Something like this that is sort of insulting to your future starting quarterback, I can't imagine it coming from the organization.
Yeah, and it kind of seemed like it started out with, a couple of bigger media people talking about it, and then it just kind of, cascaded down from there. So, I mean, our team has leaked stuff before, but this just doesn't feel like something that would get leaked out.
I agree with that. They certainly have leaked before, much less so with the new regime with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan coming in. It seems that they only do leak when it is intentional in that regard. So my guess is it's coming from another source. Linda coming in. This is unconfirmed, and so I don't want it, to be treated as a source. I'm putting what Linda said out there, trusting in Linda on this one, but have not confirmed it myself, just to say that. But Linda coming in to say Ryan Harris said that the 49ers were concerned about Trey's arm fitness. Got lots of traction. So Silver just substituted arm fatigue. Guess what? Got lots of traction as well. That's the game and too many play. it is, it comes up, you put something like this out there and I run with it, right? So I become a part of this cycle of amplifying these things. And that's sort of why I try to pick and choose. I prefer things that come with a source, that come with source material that we can truly sink our teeth into. But when it gets on a program like Colin Cowherd, it becomes something that 49er faithful want to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you're doing your due diligence to, bring it out there. It's just, I think we've seen enough of him throwing that it just, it kind of doesn't seem like he has a whole lot of arm fatigue. And if he does, it's because he hasn't really played the quarterback position to the extent that they're going to be asking him to do it. So naturally, there's going to be, arm fatigue that goes along with it when you've been out of the game for basically 2 years.
Yeah, and you're right. Arm fatigue or not, you watch that guy throw, he's got an arm cannon, that's for sure. So it does not appear that velocity is an issue. But if this did come up where he needed to not throw for a while, certainly this happens with pitchers as far as talking arm fatigue, but they're throwing considerably more heat and they're throwing more reps. So I just, until I actually hear it from the organization or from Trey, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. I'm going to listen to it, but I'm going to take it with a grain of salt and be a little bit skeptical about it.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And to go back to what Jesse said about nobody giving up any capital, I don't know. I don't believe that. I think if they trot him out there to, throw the ball and they get, bring out a little playbook of the Jimmy Gimmies and, the stuff that he's phenomenal at doing, that might make somebody a little bit itchy to pull the trigger on something.
I agree, and that ties into Ellis 10's question. Ellis 10, Sneakerhead here on the channel coming in. Rob Schuh, in your humble opinion, what was Jimmy's trade value pre-surgery versus post-surgery? Do you think Jimmy G possibly did this out of spite? I never want to, think too much for another human being. I never want to, put too many of my own words in Jimmy's mind, right? And try to come up with what he was thinking when he did that. My thought is most likely, whether there was a little bit of spite with him or not, that's up to the individual to decide. He doesn't strike me as the type of individual that would be, motivated by spite. My guess is that his doctor legitimately said to him, hey, we tried the whole give it rest route. That didn't take. Now we're going to go the surgery route. Now, could he have done that sooner? Could he have done it later? And did he make that decision based on a little bit of spite? I could see it. I'm not projecting that that's what happened. But as far as value, I genuinely thought that Jimmy was worth a second rounder before the surgery. I think you would have seen something like that come together. 2/3, a second, an early third. You saw several of those packages come out for whether it was Carson Wentz, whether it was Matt Ryan. There were trades happening that I think Jimmy would have been a part of. Now, after all the dust is settled, I think you're lucky to get a 4th or a 5th rounder for him. And I think teams may press you on eating some of his salary. I would say hard pass on that. I would rather cut him, get the full $24.2 million back.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I think that, pre-surgery, he was probably looking at late second, early third. And then, with this, I mean, we'll be lucky to get a 4th or a 5th. And right. I don't know if he necessarily did it on purpose because, I mean, it makes you not look very good, and it limits the amount of teams that are going to want to go after you, even if they can just sign you for a minimum, because they're not going to, want to pay for you to just sit on the bench injured. So, I don't see him necessarily doing it on purpose, but
no. And he does want another starting job. I mean, I think that's fair to assume about a starting quarterback within the NFL, that he does want another starting position. And so I don't think he's intentionally tanking his own value. I think that it could have been a misreading of what that would do to his trade value. He may not have realized that it was going to tank his value, but I couldn't see him doing it completely intentionally in that regard.
Yeah, I agree.
Nice. Any other thoughts on your mind, good sir?
No, that's what the only thing I had for you was to see what you thought about those teams, and if you thought we could have them getting into bidding more for them.
I am right there with you. I think that we will know in the near future whether or not. I just hope that we don't have to sit through too much drama in training camp, but we shall see. Fingers crossed, Chris. Fingers crossed.
Yep.
All right, my friend. Always great talking to you. I'm sure that we will be on together again soon. And my best to Oliver.
All right. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. I'll see you guys later.
Take care, my friend. All right, we are bringing Korean 49er into the stream. What's good, Korean 49er? How you doing this afternoon?
Can you hear me, Rob?
Yes, sir. Audio is crisp.
So, based on the topic of that's a never-ending topic.
Never ending, dude.
Yeah.
Never ending.
You already know my stance on Jimmy. I've said
And
for over
to
a
this
year.
point, you've been correct. Like, let me just put that out there. You said from day one, not like when the trade didn't happen at first and then you chimed in. No, before all this went down, you were saying Jimmy doesn't have any value. Jimmy's not going to get traded. And I was like, Jimmy's got value. Jimmy's getting traded. Well, here we are, July 7th. Jimmy's not been traded.
I was to say that they should have cut him in 2021 and recovered that full 50 point. I think it was around 51 million. So,
yeah,
but whatever, that's here and dusted. So
I love the defeat, the sound of defeat in your voice that they didn't do that. You're like, they could have had that full 50 million, but they didn't. Yeah, here we are. I'll take the 24.2. I was excited to go to the NFC Championship game last year. And granted, had we started Trey, it's entirely possible we could have still gotten there. And had we gotten there and Trey gotten the experience, maybe we're like clear Super Bowl favorites this year. But I'm okay with the fact that we got to the NFC Championship game, that we've got a little bit of unknown at this point. But I also think it's time. It is time to move on. It's time for the speculation to stop. It's time for Trey.
agreed. So this is a football philosophical question for you.
Ooh, I like philosophical questions. Please bring it.
In our lifetimes, I assume you and I are in the ballpark, same age range, give or take. Who is considered a quarterback guru in our lifetime?
Ooh, quarterback.
Or one of the top ones in our lifetime.
Guru. Talking about people specifically that work with quarterbacks on their throwing motion, things of that like, right?
Let's just say in the NFL since 1980 or late 70-ish.
I mean, certainly, like, you could point to Bill Walsh and what he did within the 49ers organization and the work on footwork in particular when it came to the West Coast offense. But like household names, I would probably throw Tom House out there. No pun intended.
Let's go with Bill Walsh since he did have Joe Montana. And what did he do all those years when he still had Joe Montana? I believe the 49ers still drafted 6 or 7 quarterbacks until Bill decided to retire. I believe 6 or 7. I can't.
That's a great point. And Jerry Rice talked about that in the interview that surfaced today around his comments of a competition between Trey and Jimmy. And that was, hey, Bill Walsh had Steve Young and Joe Montana, and it was all about competition. And the best person won the spot. And if it was good enough for Bill Walsh, it should be good enough for us at this moment. And there's something to that. There's definitely something to that. I would say this is a unique situation where the emotional baggage of keeping Jimmy around feels like it doesn't properly offset the advantage of having that quarterback competition. But honestly, the further this drags out and the fewer suitors that are out there, the more likely the Niners are to be able to re-sign Jimmy at some lesser contract value. I'd be fine to have Jimmy Garoppolo as a reasonably priced backup, even with the drama it would bring with it.
That's another topic for another day. But let me. Do you watch college football at all, or kind of follow it?
I do.
What's the one thing that all these programs need the most? They need to have a starting quarterback in every recruit.
Yes.
Capable quarterback in their recruiting class, no matter what college or what college program you follow.
Great point.
You could say, hey, I can remember. You remember that championship game between Texas and Alabama? I think it was in 2010.
Yes, was that
the Texas quarterback went
Vince
down?
Young?
No, it was when.
That would have been well before.
Colt McCoy went down early, and then Texas had to put in their true freshman quarterback. even though he was a blue chip, and they put him into the fire, and
Right.
you didn't see what happened. You saw what happened. He kind of flamed out at Texas.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is, until you find that one quarterback, who could take you to where you want to go, you got to keep bringing them in.
Yes.
So then it kind of leads to my next point. I saw some study heard some study that was referred on a podcast where they said, since 2000, what do you think is the average number of quarterbacks drafted by a team since 2000?
Oh, interesting. Like literally per year, what's the average number of quarterbacks
No.
drafted?
Let's say I'm an average NFL franchise.
Okay, how many quarterbacks
2000,
over that span?
How many quarterbacks have I drafted since 2000?
2000 till now. So
2000 let's just say
22
2018
drafts.
because that's what the study.
I'm going to say, all right, so 18 years. I'm going to say that the average team drafts a quarterback every 3 years. So I'm going to say the average would be 6.
According to the study, they said right around 8.5 to 9.
All right. So, I mean, right about one every 2 years.
But you also have to think about.
You would say that's not enough. Is that a correct assumption?
I would say that is very true. If you think about what the Patriots did, if they knew what Tom Brady would become, don't you think they would have tripped and fallen over themselves to get the number 10 overall pick at the time to get Tom Brady or another franchise?
If anyone had any idea what Tom Brady would become, he would not have been drafted in the 6th round. That is a fair point.
Also, I don't understand why people say that they should be afraid to trade Jimmy to Seattle if that was to ever happen. Didn't Bill Belichick trade Drew Bledsoe to the Bills in the Bills division?
Good reference. I actually think I would not be afraid of that. I'm more afraid. I answered this on the mailbag, but I'm more afraid of Seattle tanking, getting a good draft pick, and correctly choosing a franchise quarterback. I would rather that they have an average quarterback that I view Jimmy Garoppolo to be and be, somewhere middling for the next 5 to 6 years. I would be thrilled with Seattle hovering at like 7 and 9 for the next 5 to 7 years rather than 1 year of downturn and then back up to the top. I don't want to see that. So, yeah, I would not be afraid of trading Jimmy to Seattle.
Because I also think about this. When after Tom Brady was drafted and still won that first Super Bowl out in the 2001 season, Bill still drafted lots of quarterbacks. I think they drafted at least 10 quarterbacks from after Tom was drafted all the way through 2018. Jimmy, Matt Castle, a bunch of other names.
And they understood that they became like a quarterback carousel to where they could draft a quarterback and then, much like Jimmy Garoppolo, trade him for the same kind of draft pick that they used to draft him in the first place. And so it became this perpetual cycle.
Because what's the worst position to be in if you're an NFL franchise? You don't have a starting quarterback.
Yeah, I would say if we ended up with Nate Sudfeld starting early in this season, we could be in the worst situation for an NFL team.
Because in that same study, they also said the 49ers since 2000 have drafted either 12 or 13 quarterbacks. And there's some dog names in there. Nothing against those players, but there's some players you'd be like, how did we choose that guy? And even though we love Bill Walsh, he said that Rick Meyer would have been the next greatest thing at the time. And I believe Rick Meyer did flame out after a few seasons. But you got to understand that when Bill got Tom Brady and Tom Brady reached the heights he did, Tom at Michigan started at least 5th or 6th on the depth chart and then worked his way up because he was always afraid that someone would take his job.
Yeah.
And to me, another team that drafted lots of quarterbacks since 2000 is Green Bay. Remember, they had Brett Favre and then more or less went right to Aaron Rodgers, which he kind of fell into their lap.
Yes, he did. Very much so. Thanks to us.
Yep. Don't you think that at the time, Ted Thompson, when he was their GM and still alive, his philosophy was draft a quarterback every year? Because until you have a starting quarterback.
In particular, if you have a starting quarterback, there's something to continually drafting that backup position and making sure that you're solidified there and then turning them over if need be, right? Retrading those individuals as they enter the 3rd year of their contract.
That's the most important thing because look how long it took Cincinnati to find Joe Burrow since their last quarterback. We can say Boomer Esiason. I think that's safe to say that.
Yes, Boomer was definitely a quality quarterback.
And what team since 2000 has been the worst at drafting quarterbacks?
Ooh, since 2000, the Browns?
They're up there. The New York Jets. I can only name Mark
Ooh,
Jets
yeah,
for
Jets
that
have been bad.
because I think they chose like 14 quarterbacks, and to me, you need, like they say, you need to have darts to throw at the dartboard until you eventually hit on one. And Jacksonville's had a lot of high picks. I think Trevor Lawrence, if he progresses, he may be their starting quarterback for 10 seasons. You never know. I mean, to me, if you're Denver, John Elway runs Denver. What does he
Yeah.
want? Another big arm mobile quarterback, just like he was
Right?
before.
He keeps trying to find him.
Exactly. And he's struck out. What did he do? He traded away a bunch of assets to get one.
Yeah, bring in Peyton Manning, bring in the greatest of all time, and then do it again a few years later to bring in Russell Wilson. Not the greatest of all time, but a very high caliber quarterback.
So it's always a proverbial crapshoot because you never know. Because you got to have, I don't know. I believe another coach, Bill Parcells, said he had like a criteria, 5 or 6 criteria, where 3 of them, I believe, were they had to be a senior, they had to start for 3 years, had lots, like about 1,000
certain number of snaps. They had to be a 4-year starter. There were
college
criteria.
graduate, senior,
Right.
stuff like that. And if you consider, I think that was sometime in the 80s, his rationale would have hit around 50%.
Yes.
And if you did that as an NFL team
good.
on starting quarterbacks, you'd be quarterback rich.
Yeah. If you hit on 50% of the quarterbacks that you drafted, that is a good percentage.
Because as a 49ers fan, we had Joe Montana all the way through Steve Young, and we've had a bunch of mediocre, some good, some bad. And hopefully Trey will be a good quarterback, but that's where my theory comes in, where it says you got to keep going at it. Just because 49ers haven't done it, how many quarterbacks did Kyle draft? I believe he only drafted Trey and C.J. Beathard in his time.
I think that is correct.
And to me, he could have taken chances earlier in getting at least another body in there.
He passed on a lot of big names, that's for sure.
Outside of Brock Purdy, I forgot about him. So that's 3.
Right. Mr. Irrelevant this year. Yeah.
To me, that's where my thinking comes in. Until you find that starting, the elite capable starting quarterback that could take you places, you got to keep going, because if we look at Jimmy, he got us to the big dance, but did he get us over the top?
Right.
To me, that's a no.
I agree. He definitely didn't have what it took to get us over the hump.
Yes. And on a lighter note, the poorhouse does contain all the cuts, like T-bone and some of the loin. And so that's why I like that a little bit more than ribeye.
Nicely done.
But I also can't complain with the T-bone either. So, hey,
man, you can't go wrong with the T-bone. You can't go wrong with the porterhouse. Anytime you're throwing a fine steak on the grill, you got my attention.
Yes.
Always appreciate the food insights, my friend.
Yes. So thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. You have a nice weekend.
Hey, good to see you. I look forward to talking again.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
All right. Take care. All right. We are bringing in for the first time on the show, Treasure to the show. Treasure, how you doing?
Hi.
Hello. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. This is pretty exciting for me, but I really love the Joe Montana jersey in the background there. And
thank you.
Really great quarterback for the 49ers. But
yes.
I wanted to talk about this whole Jimmy Trey Lance thing. And I'm really getting tired of hearing about what the 49ers aren't going to do, what they are going to do, what they are questioning about Jimmy, what they're questioning about Trey Lance. I just say give the boy a chance.
Yes, you do. You have to allow Trey Lance the leverage to go out there, get the snaps, make some mistakes, because he is a young quarterback. He's going to make mistakes. I think that's inevitable, but allow him to continue to flourish and grow and get those reps and become the quarterback that we all want and hope that he can be.
Correct. And I've been a 49er a long time, and I just haven't had the ability to afford a 49er jersey or any type of 49er things like that. But I am a true 49er all the way from to the Jerry Rice days. And I also love my Super Mario.
All right. Getting the Mario going. Okay, so 2 questions for you. Number 1, favorite 49er, other than Joe Montana, who's like your all-time favorite 49er? And then second question, all-time favorite Mario game. Like which game of all the systems, of all the games, which one's your favorite?
So, first, my favorite player,
Yes.
I would have to say, actually, I'm going to give you 2.
Okay, I like it.
I'm diving deep here. Ronnie Lott.
Oh, that's a good one. Ronnie Lott, you can never go wrong with the best safety of all time, if you ask me.
I would have to say Jerry Rice.
Can't go wrong with the GOAT, the greatest of all time. I mean, Ronnie Lott, Jerry Rice, you've got one from each side of the ball, one defense,
And
one offense.
I would even
I love
go
it.
with Steve Young.
Steve Young, rounding it out with a 3rd pick for Steve Young. So those are the top 3. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
I can't fault those. If I were picking my player top 4, people have asked for that Mount Rushmore type of thing. Who are the 4 people that you would put on the 49ers Mount Rushmore? I would pick the same 3 that you just did, and I would add in Joe Montana, and boom, we'd have our 4 right there.
Yeah.
All right. Second question was favorite Mario game.
Give me a second. On Mount Rushmore, I would have to put those 3 plus you because you're an amazing guy.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. That's very kind of you to say.
You deserve to be on Mount Rushmore.
Well, thank you. I feel like I would be a good face to put up there. The beard would look nice. You know, you'd have to get it carved in there well, but it would be a good face for Mount Rushmore. Thank you for that.
My Super Mario game, my all-time favorite would have to be Super Smash Brothers.
Ooh, I don't know if I've played that one. If I had to pick a favorite, it would have to be either like the original one or the Mario Kart, because my playing days are well behind me. But I feel like I may have to try out Super Smash Brothers.
There's a game called Super Smash Brothers, and it had all the characters: Kirby, Mario, Luigi, Donkey Kong, everyone.
Ooh. So all the players from all of the various Mario universes. That's awesome.
I think it even had Zelda on it.
Oh, Zelda was an all-time favorite game for me. That was when going back to the original Nintendo, the Nintendo way back in the day, Zelda was my favorite game by far.
Yeah.
That original Zelda.
So, I have to put in my 2 cents on this whole steak thing. I would have to say a 6-ounce sirloin steak every single time.
I like it. Going strict 6-ounce sirloin every time. Hey, you can't go wrong. Sirloin's got good flavor.
And it has to be bloody.
Hey, that's the best way to get it. None of this well done stuff around here. Bring me a bloody steak. Yes. Man, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Hey, I like this message from Chris as well. Chris Royal, Sneakerhead here on the channel, comes in to say, you don't need the gear to be a true red and gold blooded fan. Don't let anyone tell you different. You are as big, if not a bigger Niner fan than people out there who've got all sorts of gear. You don't need that stuff. The real fandom is in here.
That's right. It's right here.
Yes.
And let me tell you something, Robert. I've been a Niner since I used to live in Tampa, Florida.
All right.
So I was a Bay Area 49er fan in Florida.
Nice. You were surrounded by the enemy at that point. You were out there in enemy territory, but you were supporting the Niners.
Damn straight I was.
I appreciate it. Treasure, this has been fantastic. Any other topics on your mind that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, but I really want to be appreciative to your platform and to all the people that tune in every week to you. And hopefully you and I can do this again sometime.
We can absolutely do this again sometime. I enjoyed meeting you for the first time. This was a pleasure. I'm glad that you were able to come on the program. I'm glad that you were able to share with everybody your fandom, where it comes from, your favorite players, and talk a little bit about what's going on right now with the Niners. I really appreciate this call.
I have one more thing. So, Rob, I want
Yes.
to introduce you to the lady of my life that has saved my life over and over again, and it has made me the woman that I have been since I've been with her.
I would love it. I would love it. Hello, it's such a pleasure to meet you.
How are you?
I'm doing very well. Very glad that you both were able to come on the call.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
That's the lady of my life. We've been together over 3 years now, so.
That's fantastic. I'm happy for the both of you. I'm so glad that you got to call in today and we got to have this exchange. I'm so glad. I hope that we're able to do it again. All right, Treasure. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yes.
All right, take care. That was fantastic. I really love it. I really love it. Jesse coming in. Treasure, stay faithful. Niner Empire. Yes, I am all about that. Yeah, Charles coming in to say, hey, Rob, I talked to my man, John Chapman. He said he would get up with you and try to do a show. Can't wait. My two favorite Niner content creators. John did reach out. We are going to make a show happen. So, yeah, look for the Schuh and Chapman show that's happening. It is happening. Get excited for that. I'm excited for that. All right, we are bringing into the program. You know him. You love him. Is it Eddie D? Is it Swan Song? You'll just have to find out for yourselves. Swan Song, how you doing this afternoon, my friend? Or should I say Eddie?
How's it going, Rob?
It's going well, man. How about yourself?
It's good. This is all this stuff coming out in the last week is like cap week. First, we started off at the beginning of, I think it was somewhere mid last week, where they were saying, hey, we got a chance to look at Jimmy's tape, and he's a lot better than what we thought.
That was so ridiculous.
Like, come on. Like, you guys are not watching tape after every game and seeing what's going on?
Right. It's like, mid-season when we were losing and winning these games, we weren't watching any film because it was just too tough to take. But after the season, we got back and watched some tape.
So, with all these lies and with all this weird posturing that they're doing, I know NFL executives can't be that stupid. I don't think so.
They're not. That's my question is like, who the hell's the audience for these freaking things?
So the only way that can be answered is just fans, right? And that kind of worries me because if they're trying to say this stuff with fans, then it brings in all other options that we thought we sailed past, a couple months ago. And it kind of brings it back to the forefront where, well, maybe they don't trust it all and they want to hedge with Jimmy. And the way to hedge with Jimmy is to talk good about him. And
the only other explanation, because if it's not us as fans, but it still is fans, it could be the fan bases of other teams, right? Trying to soften the blow for those fan bases that might not be super excited about bringing Jimmy in. Because you're right. If it's a message intended for 49er faithful, then that's intended to soften the blow of keeping Jimmy around. And I don't think you can soften that blow. I think that would be a big blow up within the fan base. There would be half the fan base that would be like, hey, this makes sense. You got a viable quarterback. He's going to be your backup. You don't have to start him. And then there would be half of the fan base that would be incensed and just furious at the idea of keeping him around.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up. That actually makes more sense, is that you get the fan bases of other teams anxious. So then they make a hoopla about it. And then those GMs are now feel pressure from that.
Right. Yeah, get totally somebody from the Browns to be like, hey, listen, Jimmy G over Jacoby Brissett. That's how I'm feeling right now. We got to get the handsome guy in the building.
and what's funny is that, so like we saw a clip of Jerry Rice at the golf course today.
Right.
And he was asked the question. And the week prior to this, he had said, Trey's ready. Trey can bring these things that Jimmy can't. Right.
Yeah, he just said that.
Yeah, and then like this thing that came out today, Jerry is like, well, let them compete. Like it's a total 180.
Yeah, he's like, well, maybe
Yeah.
Trey's not the man. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe they should compete a little bit.
But we all know that, I mean, at least most of us know, is that Trey Lance and Jerry Rice are business partners. Like,
I didn't. What company do they collaborate on? I didn't realize that.
Goat Fuel.
I didn't know Trey was in on the Goat Fuel.
Yeah. So it's like, well, I mean, I don't know if he has any monetary investment, but he's one of the faces of it. He's done 2 or 3 commercials with Jerry and Goat Fuel. So why would, if Jerry was worried of, like, what's the best thing that could happen for Goat Fuel? That Trey Lance becomes a star.
Yeah.
And of course, right?
You want your spokesperson to take off, right? You want him to be the next freaking Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. What's the worst thing that can happen to Goat Fuel? That Trey Lance is getting beat out by Jimmy Garoppolo and now is not starting for another year. And we're going to go through that whole mess again. Because if you think the noise and the slander on Trey Lance was bad after this offseason that he didn't play, or this season that he didn't play, what do you think the slander is going to be if he goes through this year without being the starting quarterback?
I don't think I could take it. I mean, I joke about it, but legitimately in that scenario, I might stop streaming. I might be like, nope, that's it. I'm done. I don't want any part of this. It would be crazy.
Fans would be wanting to draft a new QB.
Yes.
Like, I think that's where it would be pretty much at that point. So we all know that is not happening. I think Jerry's on this is kind of like, hey, the more that we make this look like Jimmy is valuable, the more it makes Jimmy more valuable to like you said, fans of other teams.
Right.
Right. And then they're starting to talk about it. And teams like, Cleveland, like Cleveland is in a PR mess.
Oh my God, it's a nightmare in Cleveland.
Like, even if they get their best situation, which is Watson, no suspended games, even if they got that, they're in still a crap load of mess because there's a big portion of the fan base that does not want Watson, period.
Yeah, I can't blame them with everything that's out there at this point.
So, so it's like, I mean, I'm not saying that Jimmy gets traded I know that's what they want. But at this point, if you're a team like the Browns, I mean, the Niners are playing chicken again, right? And multiple teams have already called their bluff, right? Granted,
I was just going to say, at this point, it feels like they're playing chicken because they have nothing to lose. Before, it was a legitimate game of chicken, of like, hey, we have a real chance to trade Jimmy.
You're right.
And we're just going to stare down the barrel of the gun, wait for somebody to come with a real offer. It never materialized. Now it feels like we got nothing to lose hanging on to Jimmy at this point.
They don't have anything to lose other than some of their fan base being really anxious about the whole thing.
Yeah,
but
really anxious. Yeah. Really anxious that he's going to stub a toe in practice and find himself on injured reserve for the rest of the year, and we owe him $24 million.
Yeah, and that's a risk that they take. I mean, I brought this up at your show yesterday. I mean, I've been saying this for a while, is that I'm not sure if the 49ers and Jimmy are operating anymore on good faith just because of what had happened with, the surgery incident. They had to been pissed about that.
I would think so. Even if it wasn't malicious on his part, it still probably pissed him off.
Yeah, just because it made them look foolish, right? So it's like, I don't know what is going to happen with that, but I get it. I get the Niners have nothing to lose. They can go through to training camp. But like we said, if he goes into training camp and if he's doing any type of things, even if he's throwing on the side and trade offers are not looking that great, all Jimmy side has to do is like, hey, Jimmy, how's your thumb feeling? That torn ligament that we had, we postponed surgery on it, but it looks like, it's holding us back. And we never really got to test it because we got the soldier surgery right after.
Yeah.
I mean, is it
that hypothetical? Like, is it likely? No.
Yeah.
Is it possible? Yes. The question becomes, are you willing to gamble, right? Are you willing to take that minute possibility that situation plays out as you describe it? Jimmy Garoppolo ends up on injured reserve and shouldn't be there. Now, I think that's a highly unlikely scenario. But again, as I'm factoring this in, I would take it into consideration.
Yeah, and we know about, lawyers, because that's what agents are generally, right? All agents are just lawyers, right? That actually specialize in sports instead of something else, right? And the meme on lawyers, right? That's been going on since the dawn of time. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're unscrupulous, they're ruthless. They don't they get the upper hand. It doesn't matter. They can always hide behind, hey, this is for my client.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, lawyers, you go back to the lawyer jokes, right? What's 1,000 lawyers in the ocean? A good start.
Good start.
Right? They're not well respected. That's for sure.
So I get what you're saying. Not saying that will happen, but it is a possibility. And that's something that the 49ers do risk. Now, I would like to think, let's go back to the hedging their bet. I think at this point, if they were to do that, I think it's such a lack of confidence move. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
you mean if they are hedging their bets on Trey Lance? And just for those listening, because you and I have had this conversation before, so we know where we're at. But in hedging their bets, I've made this statement earlier in the offseason that the 49ers, with the moves they've made, it doesn't look like they're pushing all their chips into the center of the table. It feels as if they're making moderate moves, but saying, hey, listen, we're going to save some of this ammunition to make additional moves if Trey is that guy and we want to push more chips in, or Trey isn't that guy and we need some of these assets to go find a guy who is that guy. So that's the hypothetical that we're talking about here as far as hedging their bets. Please continue, Swansong.
Yeah, and then when you have this $25 million, right, there is an opportunity cost with that $25 million if we were to bring back Jimmy, right?
Yeah.
That $25 million, we said we could do the rollover thing. That's one option.
Yep.
We can also do an in-season signing that, let's say Trey and the 49ers get off to a hot start, right? And we're like, say 6-2 or whatever, right? And then there's a free agent that a team that they thought they were contenders, right? And that player is going to be a free agent. I'm trying to describe a scenario close to what Von Miller was, right?
Right.
Then you have the ammunition with that $25 million to go sign that player for a year or for this stretch run to increase your chances, right?
Absolutely.
Most teams do not operate with 2 starting quarterbacks.
No.
It's that there's a reason why that doesn't happen, right?
The old saying is you have 2 starting quarterbacks, you have no starting quarterbacks.
Right. So it's like it doesn't happen that often. It's not an advantage. The reason why it doesn't happen is because it's just not practical, right?
Right.
It's like get rid of the binky, get rid of the freaking, you know what I mean? Because it's like
take the training wheels off.
Yeah, take the training wheels off and let's just go. Like 49er fans are like, I get it. Everyone's desperate for a ring, but a ring is not just going to appear, right? A ring happens when you have to go out and get it, right?
Yeah.
And we've already seen that when you have a QB like Jimmy, we've had 5 years of this, right? We had one good shot to take it all, and then an NFC championship. It was a good run, but at some point you just have to go, you know what? This ain't it. It's time to try something else. There's no guarantee that Trey Lance is going to win it all, but like I said before, in golf, if you're never up, you're never in, right? So you have to go
it's the definition of madness, insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I agree. If you're starting Jimmy Garoppolo over again and you're hoping that you're going to crest the Super Bowl hill, I just don't think you've got the right general.
Yeah, and if you look at all in general of all the Super Bowl winners, it's never a team hedging. It's a team going usually all in, and lucky things happen, and you win one. It's rare when it's like the other way around, where it's like a backup comes in and wins it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's rare when
very rare. One off. The Nick Foles situations are not your standard situation. Hold on. I want to bring in Chris Royal with the super chat here saying, Rob, when Shanny does something head scratching during the season, I need Swang to bring Shanny to life so you can ask him what he was thinking. That'd be some good content. So you got a homework assignment here, Swan Song. You got to find yourself an expression camera version of Coach Shanahan. We need Coach Shanahan to be, there to answer some questions during the season.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like, I'm not saying that. Like, at this point, I with this regime, I never know what they're doing. To be honest, like I could say all this stuff. I truly don't know what they're going to do, because there was times last year where I thought they were going to do something and they didn't, and I just don't know. Like, I don't know. We'll see if their ego, if they're afraid about losing on this bet that they made, you know what I mean? As far as, like, if they're trying to save face through all this stuff and their goal is, I mean, they're more concerned about that than winning a championship, then it's time to move on, right? Yeah. It's time to move on from that type of thinking, because that thinking is not going to get it done. Like, we might get lucky into a Super Bowl, but that's rare, right?
No, much more evidence to be convicted in whatever it is you're pursuing, and push all your chips in. Those typically are the teams that end up walking away with it. I mean, just look at last year's Super Bowl. Certainly the Rams have spared no expense in constructing their roster, and the Bengals pushed all in saying, hey, you guys think that we need a freaking offensive line? We'll double down on a quarterback and some skill positions, and we'll show you, right? Like, if you feel you have the answer, you got to go full bore into that thing in the NFL.
Yeah, because, like, it's not like we get to the Super Bowl and then we instantly going to win it. Like, let's say if the AFC has Buffalo, right? Look at Buffalo's team. Like, that's a crazy team. You have to match them or go further. Like, look at back in the day with the Cowboys and the 49ers. Like, the only way that the Niners got over the Cowboys was going all in in 94. We got Dion. We got all these players, like, at that year. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. We stole Ken Norton from them. Yeah. Right? And we're like, dude, we don't care. We're going to beat you. Because
Eddie D was relentless. I'm bringing in the Ramilia Sports Report, I think, is throwing some shade here. And I got to warn, like, you throw additional shade at Eddie D, and there may have to be a timeout. But I'm respecting this right now. I'm respecting it. He says the great Eddie DeBartolo Jr. was fined more than any NFL owner in NFL history for ownership violations, allegedly, salary cap violations in 97 and 2000. The Niners lost draft picks, ultimately lost his team. He lost his team because he tried to bribe an official on a riverboat gambling scheme, and the NFL was having none of it. But I respect every other move that Eddie D made in attempting to violate NFL policy. I'm all for it. You do what you got to do to win, and Eddie frickin' won.
Yeah, I mean, what are we talking about here? It's like, you think all these businessmen, all these billionaires that bought your franchise Rams are innocent people?
Yeah, no, they're not.
You don't make that money.
They're scandalous.
Yeah, you don't make that. Let me educate you on Ramilia. You don't make that money unless you slit a lot of throats along the way. Okay,
capitalism is a dirty way to the top. It is kill or be killed, no doubt about it.
Educate Ram fans now. I'm sick of it. I got to deal with my brothers who are Ram fans. I got to educate them. Now I got to educate Ramilia too.
Ramilia Sports Report is in here frequently and often very respectful in chastising the Niners. I'm here for it. I'm here for the healthy back and forth. But we got to pump the brakes when you're chastising Eddie D.
Rams fan wins one Super Bowl and they think they're the Lakers. When next year there's still going to be more Niners at their stadium than Rams fans. So get out of here.
Yeah, I do think they now have a little more bragging rights, but he comes back in to say, I only mentioned it because Niner fans are mad at us now. LOL. Trying to throw some shade because he's getting some shade thrown his way. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so it's like, the thing is, like back with the 94 Niners, they did everything they could because they lost the second time. And he was like, I've had enough. I don't care. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. And that's the conviction. I get it. I'll give the Niners a pass this year just because we don't know what we have with Trey. I get it. right? So you can't just mortgage your future for kind of an unknown,
Right, like you could, but it would be a high risk move.
Right.
Like you would be pushing in blind. It'd be like, hey, I'm all in blind on a poker hand. Like you haven't even looked at your down cards. You could have 2-7 offsuit, and you're like, no, I'm pushing it all in. Whereas if you wait and see that you got pocket aces, now it's a better decision to push your chips into the center of the table.
Right, because these windows don't come often. Because when you have these windows where it's set up to get you something, you can't just, it's not easy just to reset everything and just start all over, I mean, talking about what Korean 49er was talking about quarterbacks. The one thing in my 30 years of being a football fan and watching the NFL, no one has the formula right. There's so much. It's like a chemistry project when it comes to getting the right quarterback, right? It has to do with situation, and it has to do with who you drafted. It has to do with a lot of things that have to come into
let's
place.
Be honest, it has a lot to do with luck too.
Yes,
like let's not fail to acknowledge luck.
Yeah.
Luck plays a big part in life.
Yeah, I mean, and then when it came down to sure, there's some guys that are better at developing QBs or developing teams, and that's why you have Hall of Fame coaches, right? The guys that know how to put certain pieces together to have luck going on their side. Because when it comes down to it, it's luck, right? Like, is Tom Brady if he doesn't get on a team that with a great defense that lets him absorb that offense that they're running, right? Right, because
it's entirely possible that if you put Tom Brady on a different team, he doesn't become Tom Brady.
Right, and that's why the Jets have such a problem, because they keep on drafting quarterbacks, and they go through this carousel of uselessness because their team is always bad. So
they're the Jets.
They're the Jets. So then and then on top of that, their fan base is crazy and with no patience. So then that puts pressure on the team to not have any patience on who their quarterback is, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Although I think the Jets are finally on that uptrend, but we'll see.
I think so too. That was a hell of a draft, but now there's pressure from having a hell of a draft. I'm telling you, it's tricky. I do want to bring in, I've been meaning to bring in Strider's comment here because I thought it was a good one. But Strider 3006 says, Rob, Jimmy's end game was to be released and sign with a team who'd pay him big money. But now he's realizing he doesn't have the market he thought, and that's why he's open to any trade at this point. I don't know that Jimmy's moves were as calculated as many out there suggest. Strider, I know you're suggesting that right here, that Jimmy was like, hey, I want to control my own destiny. Therefore, I'm going to have this surgery. When I do, it'll force the Niners to cut me, and I'll have my choice of teams that I can go to. I'm just not convinced that there was that much forethought that went into that move. Again, I go back to this idea of, I'm sure Jimmy wanted to put himself in the best position to have success. I'm sure he would have loved to control his own destiny. And I do think it's possible that in choosing to get the surgery, he sort of said, well, to hell with the 49ers. I don't care about their compensation. But I'm not convinced that he was attempting to force his own release, just because that doesn't seem to vibe with the Jimmy Garoppolo I have an impression of. But I say that with, acknowledging that I don't know Jimmy personally. I don't know his character. And he possibly could have made this move, as you suggest here, Strider.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think it is, the one thing that makes me pause on that is just him not telling the team. So that's kind of trippy. But, there's something there, but I can't say for sure, right?
Yeah.
The one thing is that if desperate teams and desperate people are highly optimistic, right? They're the most optimistic, right? Because that's all they can be, right?
Yeah.
So
yes. Right.
So
can't actually control the outcome of games.
Yeah. So it's like, I think with the way with Jimmy is, if I were Jimmy and if I didn't see a situation that I could start, that I could increase my stock, right, as a player, right, which is starting, because a backup, he's just going to, unless he gets a shot at backup, he's just going to not get any, any film out there to show, wait, where is Jimmy at, right? So if I were him, who's made 120 million or whatever it is, unless I get in a situation where I can actually start, I'm sitting out
Right.
until
it's not like you need the money.
Yeah, you don't need the money. And then that brings up an interesting point. That could also make people that are scared that if Trey gets hurt or Trey is not the guy, that Jimmy might be out there anyways. Right? Because let's say, like, Jimmy's not going to go, hey, I make 25 million and now I'm making 7, because that's already sets what Jimmy thinks he's worth. Right? Like, think if you're Jimmy and you're making 25 million and now you're willing to accept 10 million, I know it's 10 million is still money, but what does that say about what you think your brand is?
Right.
So it's like,
true.
I can just sit out, wait for a situation. So if a player gets hurt, a quarterback gets hurt, then, like I said, what did I say about the desperate teams? Desperate teams are wildly optimistic. Jimmy will start looking a lot better. Instead of reports where he missed that throw, he's terrible in the playoffs, they'll say, you know what? He went to the Super Bowl. He went to an NFC Championship game. He's looking pretty damn good over freaking, I don't know, Joe Schmo.
Yeah, whoever their backup quarterback is.
Yeah, so it's like, I think if I were Jimmy, that's where I would go, because I wouldn't set my market at $10 million and be a backup and then be lost in the shuffle. Because there's backups that I didn't even know were still in the league. Like even Colt McCoy last year when he played for the Cardinals, I was like, he's still in the league? Like, isn't Matt Barkley still in the league somewhere?
That's a good question.
He is.
That's a good
question.
And
think about it. When's the last time he's gotten on the field? Granted, Matt Barkley hasn't made 125 million. Jimmy has. And Jimmy also, you got to think about it. He's probably, if he wants it, has a career as an announcer.
Yeah, at least as like a model, if he wants it. Like
exactly.
He's not necessarily the best vocalist, if you will. Like he doesn't always have the brightest things to say. I mean, "Feels great, baby" is a good catchphrase, but it's not exactly linguistic genius.
Right. But the fact that he has a Subway commercial.
Yeah, he's got options.
It's
is
something.
What he's got.
Yeah, it's something, right? So it's like, I don't know. If I was Jimmy, that's what I would do. I wouldn't be going anywhere unless I'm starting, right? And even if the Niners offered me, hey, $12 million to be Trey's backup, that's just too weird. If I was Jimmy, that'd be just too weird. Like you're buddies with all these people. Now you're just sitting in, like, what do you do? Yeah. Like that doesn't make any sense for $10 million.
I mean, it is still $10 million, and so I have a hard time saying, yeah, you're right, entirely. And it also presents him with an opportunity if whomever he's backing up goes down, he then gets to illustrate yet again, hey, I'm starting caliber quarterback. But I think there's something to this idea of, hey, I've got enough money in my bank account. I don't need to take a job. I don't want to be a backup. I want to be a starter. So I'm going to sit out until a starting position comes available, because it is likely that something like that does happen. I mean, I would say that it's at least like a 50-50 shot that one of the starting quarterbacks of a playoff caliber team goes down. And
he would probably make at least 10 million. Like if he was to play half of a season, because if you're that desperate team, you're going to be like, dude, you know what? You're going to pay me $1.25 million a game. Okay, whatever. This is, Tom Brady went down, or whatever, whoever quarterback goes down on a contending team, they're not going to care. Jimmy is the first place that they'll knock on once that happens.
100%. He will be the talk of the town if he does sit out. Every time there's an injury, it'll be, is it Jimmy Garoppolo time? NYCE 1030 coming in. Rob Schuh, I think if Jimmy isn't traded by training camp, I think he gets cut, and I see Seattle grabbing him. I think that's the Niners' fear, probably. I would agree with the idea that Seattle might grab him if he were available just to be signed. But I could also see Pete Carroll going for the 1-year tanking and trying to get the quarterback of the future. Too. That might be his preferred way of going about it.
Like the way that they've done it, right? Like think about what Seattle has done, like where it makes it obvious that they didn't sign. If they were cared about winning, they would sign a few of these players that they let go, right? Or they would have made more free agent signings, which they haven't. They haven't even signed, whatchamacallit, the wide receiver. Yeah, they haven't even signed DJ Metcalf. He wasn't even at OTAs. I mean, sure, the Niners haven't signed Debo, but we all know that's going to get done, right? It's different, right? Different body, different posturing. Like,
yeah, DK,
Debo
it's
King,
unclear whether they're going to do that contract.
Debo went to OTAs. He's shaking hands with everyone. He's liking tweets about saying that him and Brandon Ayuk are the best 49er, best wide receiver tandem in the league. Like, you don't do those things if you're not going to sign, like, but Metcalf, we haven't heard a peep. We have not heard a peep of Metcalf. So it makes more sense because Seattle, like I'm telling you, Seattle is a lot scarier as a 49er fan if they tank and if they get one of these quarterbacks, CJ Stroud, or one of these quarterbacks in the next draft. Yeah. I'm way more fearful of that. If they get Jimmy, that's just prolonging their rebuild, in my opinion. Because if they win 8 games or 7 games or 8 games, that doesn't do them any good. What does that do? That doesn't make their team better as far as like the draft goes.
Right. No, I'm with you on that. I think that it could be that, the 49ers wouldn't trade Jimmy to Seattle potentially just because of that whole, like, you don't trade players within the division thing. But I do not think that they would be afraid of Jimmy ending up there. And to me personally, much as you just described it, I would almost rather that scenario. I'm much less fearful of a Seattle team that is okay than one that tanks and potentially goes back to the freaking top of the division if they score a stud in the quarterback they draft.
Yeah, and what team knows the Jimmy Garoppolo more than any other team? Yeah. The Niners D.
Someone did point out that it wouldn't be Jimmy's talent on Seattle that would be the fear. It would be Jimmy's knowledge of San Francisco's team as a whole. I could see that. Again, that goes back to why they might not trade him within the division. You don't want Pete Carroll getting all the insight from a starting quarterback who knows the system inside and out.
And then the thing about it is like, hey, why do we worry about that? Pete Carroll knows us anyways. He's had our number for freaking 10, 12 years or whatever. That's a fair point. He knows us already. Like, come on.
That is a fair point. By the way, Philip brings it up, but just so those that don't know, we've got Swan Song here who has on his virtual, whatever the hell you want to call that thing, of Eddie DeBartolo. So no, we're not interviewing Eddie DeBartolo, although we would on this program. Eddie D is always welcome. Yes, we have Swan Song on here with the virtual expression camera as Eddie DeBartolo.
Yeah, so and we all guessed this too, right? Remember when we were talking about this a month ago? We said when we get closer to the camp, there's going to be Jimmy talk. There's going to be more Trey slander. You know it's going to happen.
And here it is, like
here it is. Yeah, here it is.
I'm telling you.
We're just waiting now for the Deshaun Watson thing. That's the next domino to fall.
I thought we were getting that this week. I really thought that we were getting that news soon, and it just keeps dragging on.
Yeah, the whole thing kind of worries me now in that how it's been finessed, meaning they got a female judge, right? Meaning that you think, okay, a female judge is going to be tougher, right?
You would think.
If she's if she's finessed, right? I'm not saying that they're paying off or anything, but if he doesn't get a long sentence, then that's not what they're thinking. They're not going to go, oh, it was a man that gave him a light sentence. No, it was a female. So they're not going to go that route. They're not going to question that. You kind of get what I'm saying? It kind of gets me worried in that the longer that they're keeping this under wraps, it means that the NFL wants to do a light suspension.
Yeah, I'll hesitate from speculating on this because it's such a situation fraught with freaking peril in that regard. But you could see it playing out anyway. I mean, there is now, a slow trickle of this news story about one of the sons of one of the claimants or defendants, however that would be properly phrased, in talking about how their stance had changed from how they felt about Deshaun Watson before all this came out to how they became part of the lawsuit afterwards. And so, it is both sides competing for the storylines, both Deshaun Watson's camp and those persecuting Deshaun Watson or suing him. Both of them want their story out there. So it's hard to suss out what's true and what's not. It'll be easier to just wait until the dust settles and then look at it from that lens.
Yeah, I just see, like, anytime when things like this take a long time, it just seems sketchy to me. I guess we'll find out, and I thought it was going to be now, but looks like it's probably going to be another week or two then before we find out something.
Yeah, it could be another Friday news dump type of a situation where they send it out tomorrow at end of day. You would think it'll be a Friday news dump whenever it is, whether it's this week, a week from now, or whenever. But it's one of those things where I'm not holding my breath anymore. I thought it was going to be soon, but I'm okay with waiting on that one. Much like with Jimmy Garoppolo, I thought we were going to have the trade done. At this point, I'm trying to remove the stress of waiting for the Jimmy Garoppolo trade.
Yeah, so now we went from 8 weeks, of hell, right, to now only 2.5 more weeks to wait.
We can make
we're
it
almost
through
there.
2.5 weeks.
We can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
The 26th is 19 days away. We will have the 49ers practicing on the 26th. So I am here for it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, let's see what happens. Oh my gosh.
I'm there for it.
This thing about here's another. I was going to bring this up, or I forgot to bring this up. So this whole arm fitness, arm fatigue. We've heard this story. We've heard this take already, right? A couple months ago, and then you guys did the piece last week that kind of explains how people could have gotten that, that arm fitness, arm fatigue of what Adam Nadeau was talking about.
Yeah, totally. Talking about Adam Nadeau with Jack Hammer from the 3D QB, where Trey goes to work on his throwing motions.
Yeah, and then Adam had mentioned I'm not sure if it was that piece or another piece where he was saying that, part of one of the things that they worked on after the season ended with Trey was just getting him healthy, getting him right again. Getting him to feel more normal, right? Which is, his finger, his throwing motion, all those things. And, and then Colin Cowherd brings this story up with Mike Silver. And the thing that I've noticed because I brought this up with some friends that, one thing, I don't know about you guys, but I don't watch ESPN at all anymore. Ever since that I found this community here on YouTube, I have not touched ESPN. The only time I see ESPN is when it's talked about by you guys, by the grassroots, the local reporting, right? Yeah. And so now, I think that to me is probably the biggest threat to ESPN. It's not a competitor, a direct competitor, a corporate competitor, right? Because there isn't really any, right?
No.
It's the grassroots. It's the people that that have better information. They have it way quicker, right? Like when anything comes out, you guys are on it like 30 minutes after. ESPN is like usually a day or two after, right? Unless it's something huge, right?
Right.
Like the story always breaks here first. Right? I think a lot of fans.
Definitely.
I think a lot of fans are like, at least hardcore fans, like fans that want to know about their team always. You're not going to get it through ESPN, right? You're going to get it here. And I think Colin Cowherd, I've noticed this because he had signed Middlecoff, right? He's a local guy. I really like their shows. And then I'm happy for Middlecoff that Colin signed him.
Absolutely.
Right? And then now he signed Mike Silver, right? Which is a smart choice, right? So it's like, and then now it's like, okay, let's get some traction, right? How are we going to get some traction? What are the two things that you can talk about the Niners to get traction instantly? Trey Lance. What do we got on Trey Lance? Well, there's this arm fitness thing that we can talk about. You know what I mean? It's so easy, right? And then of course the Jimmy story is a gift for all media people that keeps on giving, right? Especially on the 49ers. So I think you see these things and it's like, it totally makes sense what's happening here, right? I mean,
it does. I mean, they're just feeding into what generates clicks, what generates interest.
Yes.
And until we get back to real football, which is the 26th of this month for the 49ers, it will continue to bubble up because these stories do get traction, right? They give us something to talk about. They generate clicks for whomever puts it out on the national side of it. And so I understand it. I do wish that we had more real news to go off at this point, but it is what it is. We'll take what we can get.
Hey, exactly. It's better than nothing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Swan Song, I always enjoy the conversations, my friend. This has been a great one, and I appreciate the call.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I look forward to seeing you again soon, sir.
Yes.
We may not have the usual call-in show next week. I'm going to be attempting to get together with my folks who are coming up to Oregon from Cali, and probably won't be able to do it on Thursday, but I will on Twitter and on the YouTube page. I'll try to put out a time so that we can get the call going at some point.
Sounds good.
All right, Swan.
Thanks,
have a good Thursday evening, my friend.
You too.
All right. Always appreciate the call-in show. Appreciate all of the sneakerheads who were able to call in. Hey, if you want to call in the future, but you don't want to put yourself on video and maybe you aren't savvy enough to find the recording as Swansong has to be Eddie DeBartolo, you can always call in with just the audio. I am fine with that. If you don't want to show yourself on camera, I get it, right? Sometimes people want to remain a little more anonymous out there. That is totally fine. I will be trying to get the show off next week, but again, we'll probably be out of town Thursday, Friday. So it may be an off week for the Sneakerhead call-in program next week, but we'll definitely get it back up and running the day after. I will attempt to get Jackhammer on the program tomorrow. We had a great show last week. We will try for another great show tomorrow. Thank you to all the callers and to all of those in the chat as well. Appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for everyone participating. And until next time, cheers, faithful.